Well, Justin Trudeau has made it clear he intends to lead his party in the next general election, whenever that may be. But according to the polls, bad approval numbers and a downward trajectory have even Liberal voters thinking it would be better for the party to have a new leader. So is there still a path forward for the Prime Minister? Well, to talk about this, we're now joined by Dan Arnold, the Chief Strategy Officer for Pollara Strategic Insights. He was also the Director of Research during the Federal Liberals' 2015, 2019, and 2021 election campaigns. Dan, thanks for coming to the studio today.
Happy to be here.
So obviously, you've looked at the polling numbers, and this has been going on since the start of the summer, has gotten really bad in the fall. And one of the more recent polls came from Angus Reid. 57% of Canadians believe Trudeau should step down. I appreciate that an election is still potentially 2 years away, but is this something that the Prime Minister can recover from, or are people done with the Trudeau brand?
Yeah, and look, polling doesn't tell you that, right? It's telling you how people feel right now, and I think right now people are, in a grumpy mood. That's my expert analysis after doing many focus groups over the past year. Things are not going great in the country right now. At Pollara, we do a quarterly study on the Rage Index, we call it, how angry Canadians are about different things, and their level of anger is higher now than it was a year ago. They're more angry now about inflation than they were a year ago when inflation was twice the rate it was now, and that's because even though the rate of inflation's gone down, the price of gas hasn't gone down, the price of ground meat hasn't gone down, and heaven forbid you're trying to renew your mortgage right now, and then your fixed expenses are getting higher. So I think there's a foul mood across the land. If the election were today, that's not great for an incumbent government, especially one that's been around for a long time. I think the Conservatives probably would win if the election were today. But 2 years from now, we don't know what the economy is going to look like. We don't know how people are going to be feeling, and I think that would be the hope for the Liberals right now, is that it's a different issue set in 2 years. People are feeling a bit better. Maybe they're worried about other issues where they trust the Liberals a bit more than Conservatives. And that would be the path forward for them if they're looking ahead to the next election. Okay,
so a path forward perhaps hinging on the issues that people prioritize. But there's also, is there not, an element of trust here? And if a trust factor is gone, if they don't believe that Justin Trudeau is the man with the ideas to get life better for individuals in this country, is there really a path of a comeback for him?
Yeah, I think it's up to the government and Trudeau himself to show that he gets what people are going through, that he understands their challenges, that he's doing things to help, and that's what the government has to do right now. And you can argue how effective they've been over the last little bit on that. In terms of his leadership, I think it really comes down to, is the issue right now that people are just sick of his face and they want someone else, or are they actually upset with the direction of the country, of their lives? And if they're upset with just how things are going and the government's overall direction, just swapping him out for somebody else who's been in government the last couple of years probably isn't going to change how people feel. I think if people were just upset with Trudeau, but they like the direction of the government, the votes would be going to the NDP right now. They're the ones that are basically aligned with the Liberals when it comes to policy. And that would be, kind of a change in leadership if that was how people were feeling. The fact that votes are going to the Conservatives, I think, tells me that it is basically being driven by this kind of economic unease, this economic malaise that's out there, and a new leader is not going to solve that right away anyways.
Okay, new leader, and it had me wondering, because again, when you look at a lot of the polling numbers, they're saying that even Liberal voters who voted for Trudeau the last few elections are softening right now. So if that's the case, is there anyone in the Liberal ranks who might become a leader, who might do better than Justin Trudeau leading the party?
Look, and that's the great unknown. You don't know, because he's been tested in election campaigns, and I think people have seen that he's a strong performer. He rises his A game to the top level when it comes to an election campaign, when it comes to debates, firing up a crowd. Yeah, you know what you're getting there, and I think the hope for Liberals would be that he brings that to the campaign when it happens. Somebody else would be untested, and I think the Conservatives have been sitting on a lot of money in that war chest, and you can bet that if a new leader came in, there would be wall-to-wall ads about how this person is a disaster and would be horrible for the country. And I think that's, a risk that, someone else comes in and then you lose that kind of connection that's been made, and they get defined poorly, and things maybe even get even worse with that situation, right?
Which historically we saw with Michael Ignatieff and Stéphane Dion.
The Conservative attack ad bazooka has certainly been effective in the past and would be pointed at somebody else if they came in, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So what's the advice you would give right now to the Liberals? As someone who has done these focus groups, talked to people, looked at the numbers, what would the advice be? Because right now it seems to be the focus for the government is to keep making announcement after announcement after announcement about housing affordability and getting the ministers out there, every week that's possible.
Yeah, I think for any government, you want to show voters that you understand what they're going through, that you're doing things to make their lives better, that you get it, that you're not out of touch. The kiss of death for any government that's been around for 8, 9, 10 years is that people look at you and they say, they don't understand my problems, they're out of touch. So you need to do things to show that you get what they're going through. I think the housing announcements are good to that end. It shows the government understands what young people are going through, what the challenges they're facing. They need to do more of that. They need to keep doing that. And then I think, when you get into an election campaign, if we're being honest, they got to draw a contrast with Pollara. They're going to have to show that he's not somebody who maybe you're upset with the current government. You got to show that the alternative is worse, and they're going to have to draw that hard contrast with him in an election campaign.
Except right now, when you look at favorability numbers, Pierre Poilievre's numbers are going up, and of course the Conservatives are very much in the lead. How do you counter that?
Yeah, and I think, look, in the short term, I think a lot of that is driven by just frustration with the government. I think voters know a lot about Pierre Poilievre right now. We did a poll, Pollara, last month where we asked people, can you name the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada? And they had to give the answer in their own words. We didn't give them the name and say, how do you feel? We said, can you name this guy? And I was, we're pretty generous grading on this curve here. If you said his name is Peter Poilignol or Pierre Poilievre, we said, okay, that's close enough. We give them a full mark on that. But even with that generous curve, it was 57% of people who could actually name him. And that's, if you ask them, can you name 3 of his policies or something about him, I imagine the numbers would be even less than that. So I don't think people know a lot about him right now. And I think that, when you get to an election campaign, that's an opportunity to fill in the gaps. And look, if he fills in the gaps in a positive light, his numbers could get even higher. But if the Liberals are effective at filling in the gaps and giving people some doubt about the risk, about the alternative, then I think that's the opening for the Liberals to maybe not be beloved and get reelected, but at least be the best option on the table and get reelected.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens, and of course, we'll speak again. Dan Arnold, thank you for the time.
Anytime.